Hello everyone, my name is Jordan Hansen and I am here with council candidate Tim Goldammer.
Yeah, that's me.
Yeah.
Also your current councilman in Ward 1.
I was going to say that, but I'm winging everything, so everyone knows these videos are not scripted at all. I tell everyone the same rules. We're doing it 100% raw, no preparation, and we're just going to do one take.
Yeah, see what we come up with.
So you've had the opportunity to probably see the other videos, at least you know what we're going to talk about. So the one thing I kind of like is, the forum the other night. You never get enough time to say what you want to say, and you probably said some stuff you wish you wouldn't have said a little, or maybe phrased a little differently. So let's start with that and see if there's anything you'd like to elaborate more on.
Well, I think with the forum, one of the things that's frustrating is there's only 5 questions, and I don't think that gives people enough time to find out who people are.
Yeah, I only got 3 questions.
Well, and so that when you're covering 9 candidates, it can be very frustrating that I know that there were some questions from the audience that didn't get asked, or it didn't really show what the different policies of the people that were there trying to get votes. Mm-hmm. And so I know that left some people frustrated, and I know that's left people frustrated in the past. And so some of those questions are difficult. I know one of them was about our relationship, and I bet when you posted that you had 2 more candidate forums going or scheduled the other day,
people did not expect that you were going to be one of them. Nope.
People probably didn't think it was me.
No.
I chuckled to myself when I saw that, and I was like, it's one of those things that
I did it for that reason, because I want people to have a little bit of mystery in their life, you know what I mean?
Yeah. The newspaper in this town does a really good job of covering stories. I think they do a really good job of providing information, but I think sometimes they use a negative slant. And so when we talk about the relationship with the mayor, this Mayor Jordan Hansen, or even previous mayors, I think if you look at the history, one of the things that got a lot of publicity was subsidies. The mayor produced cuts to the subsidies. The first mayor I worked with provided $0 for subsidies in his budget. And so I think sometimes those things get forgotten as a part of the overall arching storyline, that they, just like a forum only has so many seconds to ask a question, they're only going to delegate so many words to a story. And so I think that sometimes all of the details don't get hit as a part of what we're talking about. I think there's a lot of city projects that are really good, but if you take a negative slant to them, you could really get people upset about the overall project itself because of the details they put forward, or whoever put forward as a part of the presentation. I also think at times council members don't do the best job of articulating a point. I know that in my ward on Monday night at our last meeting, we had the sidewalk infrastructure going in.
Yep.
And one of the things that particular area of town struggles with is drainage. And we talked a little bit about drainage. Drainage doesn't go under the sidewalks. But the point that I didn't feel like I articulated well in the meeting was we should hold off until the city has fixed the drainage in that area. And so I think that after I talked to some council members after the meeting, that their viewpoint was that, well, the drainage isn't going to be affected by sidewalk if they go back in and fix it. My thought was, if we have a rain event, those homeowners are already going to be negatively impacted by water. And so already having a bill that they're going to have to do potential remodels for those projects. And so why are we stacking on top of another bill, until we have that problem resolved? We should have waited. And so those kinds of things, I don't know that I articulated that well. I went back and watched the meeting, and so we miss those sometimes, right? And we say things that, like, oh, that's not what I meant to say, or that's not how I intended to say it, but that's how it came out.
I stopped rewatching meetings because I feel like when I'm in the meeting, I'm like, that's exactly what I wanted to say. And then I go back and watch, I'm like, that's what I sounded like? Man, I wish that's not what I meant to say, or that's not how I intended for it to come across. It's just hard, public speaking or talking in front of people and being recorded at the same time is not the same as what you think you say.
Yeah, and sometimes I think you're going to take a position on an issue knowing full well that people aren't going to be happy about it. And so when we get to a council meeting, you're going to say things and hope that you come down on the right side of what your area of town wants. I know that people have provided feedback to me about different projects and things that they were happy about or not happy about. And so,
yeah, and just to deviate before we get into it, is I always think about the interstate as one of those projects that people must have been furious about, because we cut people's farms in half, like as far as like right down the road. Like even if you go and look at like the GIS, there's spots where like people own on both sides of the interstate and they have no access, and it just kind of But I mean, look how much we use it. You know what I mean? I'm not saying that we need to do that for everything, but it's just interesting. I wonder what those conversations were in the past, you know?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's start with, what else do you want to talk about at the forum? And I agree, yeah, the forum people that put it on, it's nothing bad against them, but you can only get so much information in 2 hours, and 2 hours is a long time to sit and listen to people. So I think it was covered well. It was nice to get at least a little bit of everything.
Yeah, and I think the way that people articulate or answer questions, I think you do get a sense of a person and some of those things, but I don't know that a person's economic policy, for example, is something that I am passionate about. I think that's one of the reasons why I feel like I want to serve on the city council, is because of my financial knowledge. I really enjoy reading budgets, as nerdy as that sounds. And I joke with Marshall from the newspaper that the fall for me is watching football and reading finance sheets. And so going through line by line as I'm watching football and picking out and asking questions about every single thing that we're doing in the fall as we look through or sift through the budget, and trying to identify projects that I'm like, this makes a lot of sense, or I have questions on, or, oh, that's in there, perfect, I don't need to try and fight for that. And so those kinds of things are what I enjoy doing. And so, yeah, that's kind of the crux of that, I guess.
Okay, well, anything else you didn't cover at the forum you want to cover on before we ask about the same questions I asked everyone else?
No, go ahead.
Let's talk about indoor sports facility. That seems to be like the one thing most people are chatting about now, because some people think it's super important and some people think it's like, do we really need it? So let's do that, and then we'll segue into the Corn Palace.
Sure. So the indoor sports facility, my questions remain the same about that facility. First, what's the financing structure of it? How are we going to pay for the structure? How are we going to pay for continued operation? What sports are we putting in there? What percentage of the sports are going in there? Who will have dominating control of those infrastructure and cost needs? As you look at an indoor sports facility, what my fear is that if you try and build anything without those questions answered, you're going to leave yourself with a place that has very similar conversations right now as the Corn Palace, where there is economic concerns about the Corn Palace regularly, and how do we address that with a sports facility ahead of time? And then how do we make sure that whatever goes in there? I was a soccer player growing up. I grew up playing indoor soccer as a part of that on turf, and really enjoyed that experience at the Expo Center in Sioux Falls. And so I certainly think that there's a need in our town, and being able to support something like that makes sense. But what is the actual dollar? What does the plan actually entail? Where are we going to put the facility? How much parking does it need? Is it a practice facility where we're trying to let youth get better? Or is it a place where we're going to have tournaments and different activities?
That was my big question.
That nobody at this point has said anything, because we haven't finished the champion of that cause. And so Mike Bathke, I think, has done some work on that project, but until those questions are answered as a part of what we're doing, I don't know that I can say 100% I'm for or against a project like that. The other thing that I think, because we're so early on in the process, is, in my mind, there's no way it gets done in the next 3 years. And so
I would agree with that.
And so when you ask me what is my position on it, I probably in my next city council term will not have the opportunity to make a vote on that issue. I will probably have the opportunity to sit in meetings and discuss and develop a plan for that, but I doubt very much in the next 3 years that goes from where we're at today to groundbreaking as a part of that philosophy. And if we do, I don't think we'll have thought through all of the things that are required to make that plan successful.
I never thought about a timeline, really. Probably should have. So my brain operates a little differently. I always work like, what do I want to see? How do I want to see it at the end? And then I try to fill all the gaps in between. You know what I mean? And if you can't, then you can't.
Yes.
You know what I mean? I can never just try to think about everything and then do everything.
And I think that's one of the things that can be dangerous about city council or the mayor or anyone doing something and saying, this is what I want to fight for, this is what I want to do. And if you don't provide the clear timeline with that, or what that looks like, some people are like, are they going to try and build that next week? It's like, that's not possible. Our city operates in a way where things operate slowly. It's the unfortunate truth of government, but the flip side to that for me that I think is really healthy with that is it allows people the opportunity to have a voice. That along the way, people can voice opinions, provide feedback, and then hopefully we can make the project as good for as many people as possible.
So let's do the Corn Palace then.
Okay. So
what's your position on expanding and maintaining and everything?
Yeah. So me and the mayor sat on a committee that overviewed and worked with a design group to come up with a new design for the Corn Palace. There are some things in there that I don't feel like the Corn Palace needed. Second floor seating above the gym basketball courts on each end.
And I love that idea.
And so, but it did involve changing out the stage area, redesigning that seat structure. It involved 3 floors. I thought maybe 2 floors would have been fine. For me, the expansion or remodel of the Corn Palace needs to fix 3 things. It needs to fix the ability to have events during the summer. So giving the Corn Palace gift shop a facility in the location to have a gift shop, but also be able to still put on events. I think that at some point we need to do something with the bleacher side or the stage side of the Corn Palace. And then also, as we look at increasing rules and requirements around different sports activities, they want different teams to be able to leave and come on both sides of the court. And so being able to address entrance and exits so that way we're not all funneling to one tunnel. There's just been a lot of issues at all levels of athletics that teams going into the same tunnel after playing a heated game can sometimes continue that heated mentality after the game is over. And that's just not something you need. And so those are the things that I would want to fix. As far as a remodel of the Corn Palace, I think the Corn Palace in our town as a whole does a lot of good. I volunteer down there quite a bit, taking tickets, doing events. And the thing that I'll tell you is that every time I've ever worked at the Corn Palace, at least 10 tourists have stopped by and said, "What's going on? I thought this was free. I'm just stopping in Mitchell to visit." And so I think that even during the school year, when the Hoop City Classic, Palace City Classic, all of those things are going on, we still have tourists in our town that are specifically stopping because of the Corn Palace.
I would agree with, because I mean, obviously my office is attached to the Corn Palace and I like to just walk through and see, but man, there's people from different countries in the middle, like in February, just walking through. So it's just, I never knew that before. I always thought it was like, hey, here's tour season, people just go like crazy. But tour season isn't the only time tourists visit.
Yeah, I try and guess the accent. Where are they from the accent, and I'm pretty wrong pretty much all the time. So
yeah, I like to take pictures for people because they have the little things where you stick your face through the corn or whatever. And
Yeah,
so I'm like, hey, let me take a picture. And I never tell them who I am. I just think it's funny,
Mm-hmm.
So you are in favor of an expansion?
To some degree, yes. I don't think that the $15-16 million expansion is probably not something that I think we can afford. And when the mayor originally sent out what are your thoughts on a Corn Palace expansion to the city council, my feedback to him was the same as it was for the sports facility. What is the economic plan for that? How are we going to pay for it? What is the infrastructure like? And so actually, let me stop for a second. And I'm speaking right now to the donor that wants to donate $20 million to the Corn Palace expansion. If you're out there listening and you've waited for the sign to donate $20 million, I am all for expanding the Corn Palace and making it awesome. But how are we going to do that economically? And what advantages do we get out of that expansion?
Yeah.
One of the things that I was very critical of, because I sit on the Corn Palace event board, is where are we going to do concerts? If we remove the stage, how does concerts work at the Corn Palace? How do events work at the Corn Palace? What does operationally look like at the Corn Palace for the success of the facility and Mitchell? And so those are all pieces to that puzzle that, like you said, Corn Palace expansion, something I probably am in favor of at some point, but it has to make sense long term for Mitchell.
Yeah, see, and I'm not in favor of it because I just don't see it working. And I mean, this is obviously one of the things that we don't agree on.
Yeah.
But I just sitting in with Dave, the Corn Palace director, and looking at all the available calendar dates, there's just almost none. The whole calendar's almost full. But to combat, now to agree with you is if we could do something different with the gift shop, then it would make a little bit more sense. But
I also think if you could do something where
I think there's 10 available weekends at most during the year right now.
Yeah, I also think if you could do something with the flooring to provide infrastructure where we're able to remove the basketball court and put down different flooring so it wouldn't negatively impact the basketball surface during season and have that capability, I think there's a lot of possibilities that go beyond the dates that you're suggesting. Because then suddenly when there's not basketball going on, now that the high school has their own facilities to practice in and aren't in the Corn Palace as often, there's certainly a lot more possibility for events throughout the school year that we currently don't have at the Corn Palace. And a lot of that has to do with you don't want to damage the court and try and maintain that with the basketball season going on, because outside of the chamber, the basketball is the highest rented use of the Corn Palace.
Mm-hmm. Okay, what's next here? Let's talk about housing.
Okay.
What are your thoughts on that? Do we have a problem? Or do we have a solution? Are we focusing too much? Not enough? Affordability, things like that.
Yeah, so I think that there's a lot of different ways you can tackle housing. Just tell you my story. I moved back to Mitchell about 15 years ago to work at Dakota Wesleyan University. When I moved to Mitchell, there was no housing available. It took me a month and a half to find housing. During that time, I stayed at a hotel. And so for the first month and a half I lived here, I lived in a hotel. And then I was able to find housing, an apartment downtown that I did not enjoy living in. I didn't necessarily care for my neighbors. It was a tight building. It had a very heavy smoke smell. They allowed smoking in the building.
That's crazy.
And so just some of those things that were not for me. And I had thoughts about what am I doing in this town? Why am I here? And did I make the right decision moving? Because I moved for a good job. I was the food service director for Dakota Wesleyan University. I was getting promoted through my facility, and I'll never forget when. And so I moved here with a moving company, thanks to the company I was working for. And when the movers moved me in, they asked me if something went wrong because of where they moved me from to where they were moving my stuff to. And so when we talk about housing, that's what my concern is that if you have somebody that's moving here for a good job and they can't find housing, that becomes an issue. I think in the last 2 years, we've done a lot of good tackling those things with new apartments coming online, new low-income housing, new workforce housing, new developments that are not necessarily helped by the city through Jensen and Mueller Lumber. I think there's a lot of housing opportunity in Mitchell now. And so I don't know that we've necessarily tackled the issue long-term forever, but I do think we've made a lot of strides to fix the housing issue that I felt Mitchell did have.
So do you think we have solved the issue? Do you think we need to spend more time or an effort on it? Or do you think we have a problem still?
I think we're at a point where we need to be careful about what, from a city's perspective, we're doing with housing.
Right.
I think Jeremy Jensen came and gave a presentation to the city, and I thought he brought up and articulated some really good points. And I don't know that, for me, in my viewpoints, I don't know that the city needs to be involved in subsidizing housing any further. I think I'll continue to support housing TIFs that provide economic development, but I don't know as far as subsidizing housing beyond what we already have done needs to happen.
That's fair. Okay, what else are we talking about here?
Can I bring up one more thing? Because
this is your interview.
I think the First Avenue development is something that has a lot of headlines.
Mm-hmm.
I made a video on my Facebook page yesterday about it, and I think, again, the devil's in the details of that contract. It has 22 provisions in the contract of the transfer of land. The headline I think the newspaper went with was something around $1 million $1 million property transferred for $1. That negative connotation is that we deeded them the land and they're able to do whatever they want with it. There was no provisions.
Uh-huh.
But we have 22 provisions in that contract. The two that I like to highlight, because it's things that I were specifically frustrated with in the past, is a revision clause that if the development doesn't happen, the city gets the land back. And so
I was very adamant about that too. Like, we can't just give away land with no expectations.
Yeah. And then the other part of that contract that was included, and so it had the other dirty word that people were very frustrated with, was TIF. And that they were giving them the land and then we're also giving them a TIF. But that TIF, those TIF dollars, in part will come back to the city of Mitchell to repay some of the financing costs that we put into the land, and then also some of the costs that went into tearing down some of the different facilities, we'll call them. I don't necessarily want to call them homes because I don't feel like most of them were livable anymore. And then it's not going to be all of it, and I'm very open and honest about that. It's not going to be all the money. We're not going to get everything back. But we gave some of the land away to the Habitat for Humanity, and that was good.
Nice, yep.
And so I think that overall that development is going to be good and beneficial for the city. I know that some people were frustrated that we went with what Sioux Falls contractor, Van Buskirk. I think that, and I may be biased because I lived in a Van Buskirk property at one point. I thought they did a good job as my landlord and well-maintained and well-kept property. I have worked with them in the past, not financially, but through other city projects, and thought they did a good job. And so when we consider projects, I think it's important for people to understand we can't necessarily think about where a contractor's from.
Right.
That because of state bid law, because of different laws that are in place, we have to look at the project as a whole. And so we had two proposals. One was we're kind of interested in this idea, and the other one was, this is what we want to do, and this is how we want to do it. And I thought that was the Van Buskirk idea, and I thought it was really well done.
And the other company I'm actually still talking to, I just got a text yesterday, and I'm gonna have a follow-up call. So, we're generating leads at least.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So that those other people might be interested in something else.
Yeah.
I want to talk about rental inspections because you were a big champion of that, and I was a big champion of that, and then it totally died, which I got to be honest is one of the most biggest letdowns in the city council chambers that I've had. So what's your thoughts on that? Because I don't want to say I've totally given up on it, but it's really frustrating to put that much effort into something that just dies.
Well, and I think that, again, we look at that project as a whole, and I think they articulated some good points when they came to city council chambers.
Who's they?
The landowners that came to the city council. That when we originally talked about it, we talked about pre-inspections as a part of what we're doing, and there was a lot of pushback for that. Some of the language in the contract was, I don't want to say vague, but not clear. Things like smell. Well, what smells bad to me and what smells bad to you could be completely different. And so as we think about that and how we might enforce that, some of the things that we were putting in there seemed off. And really for me, when I think about rental properties or rental inspection, the thing that I want to see is safety. And so when we sat on the committee together, that was my big push, is that we need to create safe rentals. And so whatever we're inspecting for, it should be to prevent the risk of human life loss. And so as long as those are the things that we are looking for, and some of the things that we wanted, I think the city inspector could already go inspect. I think some of those things could still come back in some capacity, as far as like if there's exposed electrical wire and your landlord's not doing something about that. I think it is an obligation to the neighbors, to everyone that might be affected by that house burning down, to go in and ask or work with the landlord to get it fixed. Sometimes the thing that I hear from landlords is that we didn't even know this was a problem. And so once they know it's a problem, they're happy to go in and fix it. And so working with them to make sure that if there's some kind of inspection, that they should have the opportunity to fix that property and get it livable again. And so those are the kinds of things that, I'm still passionate about, still in favor of, and I have no quit in this dog. And so I will continue to look for and work on code that makes Mitchell rental property safe. I think that as long as it's actually safe to human life, that nobody would have a problem with those kinds of issues.
Let's talk about the prison now. Change up.
Sure.
Obviously, that was one of the biggest pushbacks. Some people loved it, some people hated it. I took a ton of criticism both ways, which I'm fine with that. I don't know even what your position is, so I'm asking you. I asked everyone else, I'm trying to be fair. So obviously there's some upside with jobs. Obviously there's some downside with whatever downside there is. So what's your opinion on that?
Well,
and it's way too late. There's nothing we're going to do to change it. We don't have a prison coming here in Mitchell, so we're just talking about it.
Yeah. So I think that with any issue, I did what I always do. I listened to people on both sides of the issue and provided feedback based on that. One of the things that I was frustrated with is how Governor Roden operated that discussion, because I don't feel like at any point was the prison actually coming to Mitchell.
I've said the same thing multiple times.
And so Governor Roden's leadership team is the one that put together the task force, and it was led by John Hansen as a part of the task force. The lieutenant governor was the one that was actually sitting in Governor Roden's position, and the task force put out a proposal But when it came to listening to or looking at those proposals, the first thing that was said was, we only want this in Sioux Falls.
Right.
And so what frustrated me about that is that, one, I couldn't read my awesome letter that I had written because I understood from a state perspective why choosing Mitchell made sense. There was a land seller interested in selling the property. That wasn't the city. That was a private individual that was looking to sell, and an interested buyer in the state. And I don't know constitutionally if the city of Mitchell has any authority in that case to supersede that sale and say, we don't want the prison.
I would say no, but.
And so what my letter stated was, there are huge infrastructure costs that can be attained from the state by building there. I understand that completely. But what I would love to see is the infrastructure savings going back to the city of Mitchell for the things that I know we will need. We will need an expanded police force. We will need aid in supporting individuals who do not have the support structure as they come out of prison. And as we look at what savings we're making, let's shift those into social programs that actually help recidivism in the state of South Dakota. And that's what I was fighting for. And so as a part of that conversation, I wrote a very well constructed email. I thought about printing it because I thought this was going to get brought up just so you could read it to people. Because I sent that to the task force even before I went to Sioux Falls to speak on that very matter. That as we think about how and what a prison would mean to Mitchell, I think there's huge economic upsides, but I also recognize the real potential for problems. And so as long as we're going into it with eyes open about the potential problems and trying to address those before they become problems, that was my concern. But I met with individuals like you did, either over the telephone or in person, and discussed both sides of it. And I did hear people say that they were in favor of it, but they couldn't publicly say it because they were afraid of retribution from the people that were against it. And they were very adamantly against it. And they did a very good job of creating and having a good conversation about why they were against it. I thought they did a really good job to that point. And so I think I answered your question, but
I think so.
yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about business then.
Okay.
What are your thoughts? And you voted no to the retail strategies, and I've talked, quite a few people even that are running that weren't on there would have said the same thing. So what's your thoughts on is the city council play a role? Should they play a role? If they do, what's the role?
Yeah, absolutely. So the retail strategies, let's backtrack just a little bit into budget season. I was a person who fought to get it into the budget.
That's right. Yeah, I put it in. Council took it out. You fought to put it back in.
Right. And so we got budget authority for $50,000. And we
still got the 50.
Yeah. And so there's still time for a chance for economic development in some capacity or some project. The thing that frustrated me with the group, because we met with them on a Zoom call and they talked to us, and they were the ones that got me excited about the project again. But then they came and delivered a sales pitch to city council that I was like, did they not at least Google our town before they pitched this? Because they talked about wins that included runnings and Culvers, and we already have those things. And so if their economic development included wins that our town already has as like the flagship, we're sticking our pole in the ground to show you we're successful in businesses that we already have, what economic development are they promising? And then I looked at the proposal even further, and of the companies that they had a slide that showed different companies' logos, and there were some good-looking companies on there that I'm like, man, those are really fun logos to see. And man, if any of those businesses open in Mitchell, I'd be very excited about it. But then I looked beyond the logo, and then I looked at what the business model of those entities were, and I felt that 74% of the businesses that they were showing already exist in Mitchell in some capacity. Now, when I say that, I mean that like a Mexican restaurant is a Mexican restaurant. Now, is Chipotle a great Mexican restaurant that we could enjoy? Yes, but we also already have several good Mexican restaurants. We already have good pizza restaurants. We already have good sandwich restaurants. And so if you ask me if the city should spend money on economic development to create competition in a retail space that we already have retail, I don't think that's the purpose of it. I think that economic development should look at what we currently have and how can we expand and grow economically into a different portfolio. I think that as you look at economic development as a whole, one of the things you have to consider is where are we at today and where will we be at in 50 years? And if we could get a manufacturer, another small manufacturer that employed 50 to 100 people, that would be huge for Mitchell. Those are the kinds of economic development that I think the city of Mitchell should be pushing for. And just to be very clear, not to say that if a Chipotle or a Qdoba wanted to come, I wouldn't be opposed to those things. But I don't know that we need to spend $50,000 in taxpayers' dollars to get economic development to happen in that way. The other part of my consideration was Roger Music came up and laid out a different strategy that I thought was really good in that process. And in that process, what he talked about was trying to recruit individuals who used to have to report to an office that no longer do. I think that's a growing segment in the workforce, that as we look at workforce development, how can we recruit individuals or individual families that don't need to be in a specific location for their job, but could be anywhere? And that became much more attractive to me than a retail that I think if we got another restaurant, we already have 3 new restaurants coming online. And not to mention the expansions and continued growth of restaurants we already have, remodels and redevelopments. And so those expansions and changes are based on customer feedback, and I was really excited to see those.
So I guess my thoughts are different on some of these. I personally think getting a manufacturer is going to be extremely tough. I feel like we've tried really hard for a lot of years getting a whole business to move here is crazy. I have an office in this building, and if someone offered me a free office, I might not move because it's just too much effort. And looking at the sales tax from manufacturers versus retail, it's huge. It's 10 to 1. Now, on the flip side of that is the people that probably work at the manufacturers shop at the retailers. And then the other part is the remote workers. Everyone in the country seems to be trying to attract those guys. So I don't know how you stand out in Mitchell. You got to have things for people to do, which is buying shirts and clothes and whatever else. So I don't know, I don't know if that was a complete thought or not, but that's just kind of my thing is I don't like, you said something about competition with who we have. I think, no matter what if you try to never bring anything because you're going to compete against someone, we'll never have anything. We're going to just be stuck forever.
Correct. But I don't necessarily know that it's the government's place to bring in competition.
Well, I agree. So whose job is it to attract businesses?
To attract businesses?
Yeah.
I think the chamber is doing a really good job of attracting businesses. But I think at some point, companies and developers have to be interested in moving to Mitchell.
Right.
That we have to show those individuals. The people that are investing in growing Mitchell are the people that know the value of Mitchell. Chef Louis is coming back online because the people of Mitchell know the value of that brand and know the value of that restaurant to our town, especially on the north side, where I think they have been hungry for another restaurant. That pun was very hard and very intended.
They said something at the groundbreaking like, we're putting a steak, I don't remember what. They used the word steak for a pun, and it was pretty funny.
Yeah.
So, what businesses have been attracted to Mitchell in the last 10 years?
In the last 10 years? As far as manufacturing specifically goes?
No, any business.
Okay, so let's talk about new businesses that we've had. Runnings expanded and grew into a new footprint.
So Runnings was part of I don't know if it was 100% that, but what was the other one we did before this? Not Retail Strategies, the one before that. What was that one called? Buckley's?
Yeah, something.
Buxton.
Study.
Buxton, yeah. That came out of that deal. That was how we originally reached out to those guys.
Yeah, and the chamber was a part of that, right?
Well, what happened was the city hired Buxton, and it was 1 year, and then the chamber took it over, and then they eliminated it. So during that 1 year it was active within the city, that was when those conversations started.
Okay. Well, and so Runnings, but not necessarily Runnings coming to Mitchell, but being in Mitchell and then choosing to expand into a bigger footprint across.
Right, yep.
We had Adamo's open, and they're successful. I think that I was just texting the chef before this started about when I could get in there next to go eat, and so I'm excited about that. We have Lupo's opening on Main Street. That's going to be a pizza and I think a very nice restaurant. We've had the brewery come to Mitchell. We just did Chef Louis' groundbreaking, but then also all of the myriad of businesses that have expanded their footprint, or the chamber has done a groundbreaking in the development of those businesses, or even just ribbon cuttings for new businesses that have been in town. And I've been to a few of those, but too many for me to be able to.
There's like one every day, it seems like, yeah.
Yeah, and so I think that there is development happening. I don't know that we do enough to celebrate the wins that are development in Mitchell. And I don't know that we've had a giant manufacturer come, other than there's that facility that's just outside of town between here and Plankington, where they refine things that are grown in the ground. What is that? Oh, the soybean plant. It's probably a pretty big.
I thought you said between here and Plankington.
Parkston.
Okay, I was like, what are you talking about?
Oh, that's going to be a problem. People are going to know now that I get my P-towns mixed up, east, west, north, south. Yeah. And so.
Okay. I was like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
Okay, let's see. What else we could lake. Let's talk about the lake. To me, that's an easy one because we pretty much are on the finish line of the. We're on the finish line of the start. But go ahead.
Okay, and so right now we're at a place where we're about to start getting bids for a drawdown structure.
Mm-hmm.
And so in that process, I think we're at a place where we're really fortunate that bids are being.
Keep talking. I'm just going to make sure the video is still rolling because the last thing I want to do is talk forever. And
yeah, this is a big issue. That we are at a point where we're going to get competitive bids, hopefully. And we've been getting competitive bids, so I'm really excited about that. I think that with this particular project, we have to be very careful about a lot of different components and pieces of that project. But I do think people are excited about bidding it and trying to be competitive with those prices. I think that as we look at crude oil prices and the infrastructure that's required to actually go out and dredge out the lake, it's some of those things. And so the things that I've been telling people in my ward as I've walked around is that my concern is the fiscal responsibility of the city, in that we have a fiscal process in place with a loan to do this project at a budget. And so as long as we're within that budget, I am agreeing with the people and that's what should be done. If for some reason the drawdown structure comes back exponentially high, my first question is, should we push it off another year? And the reason for that is because of the short timeline of that bid. And so if we're bidding in June for a project that's happening in October, would it be better to consider both timelines? Which one fiscally makes the most sense? And if we're saving $50 to push it off a year, that doesn't make sense. But if we're saving $1 million by pushing it off a year, begins to make a lot of sense. And so that'll be one of the things that I look at. I know that the lake residents aren't going to be happy to hear that there's a potential.
Some people are going to be so mad if we push it off another year.
I know, and there's a lot of people very passionate about this. I appreciate all the Friends of Fire Steel and their hard work, and I know that they would be in support of an economic decision that made sense. And as long as the project was getting bidded and there was a firm timeline that when we bid this, let's do it correctly, let's see what the bids come back at, and see what makes the most economic sense, but then also gives a firm timeline for when the project's going to get going and get done.
I have a timeline, I'll show it to you after this, it's not completely finalized, of all the different things that need to get done, the permits, the review, the process, the whatever, all the things that need to get done and how they go concurrently. And we're trying to wait for some updates, but I'll show you after that. Hopefully I'll have that picture next week for everyone else to see, but it's really nice to see a timeline, like when the project starts and all the things that need to get done before then. Because I think for me, like when I found out the DNR didn't actually approve this thing, for one, I was extremely upset because that's not what I had been told. That's not what everyone had been told. But for two, it's like, what other roadblocks are we going to have? Because if we're going to have a roadblock, I want to find out about it now, not in 6 months or 1 year or 18 months. So it's nice to actually see where we're at.
Well, and I think that right now the frustration that Mitchell has is we have this project, we have this plan. Let's get a timeline and let's get that timeline going.
It's been 2 years since I was elected, and the same day was when the plan was approved. I can see how people are frustrated.
Yeah, and so I certainly want to get going on the project. I want to do something for Lake Mitchell, and I want to get that water cleaned.
Yeah. What else did we miss? I know there's something. Anything you want to talk about? Anything else you want to
add? I guess one of the things, circling all the way back to the beginning, is we talked about at the forum what things are going to come on the radar in the next 3 years.
Yep.
One of the things that our city is going to be faced with, and it's not the city's necessarily issue singularly, but doing something about the crime population in our town is something that I'm passionate about. Making sure that we're working with our police to make sure we continue to have as safe as streets as we've had is something that I'm always looking for possibilities and solutions. And so one of the things that I think will be coming up in the next few years is a partnership opportunity with the county and working with the county to create a new jail space somewhere. I don't know any of the timeline with that, but their jail is currently at capacity regularly, if not over capacity. And whenever you get a jail over capacity, you're just creating an unsafe place for officers. And then we also then have to spend more money to transfer prisoners to other places to have them jailed. And so there's a lot of possibilities. And so I think that with that comes a lot of potential for the city of Mitchell to move forward in the right direction.
And we talk, me, the county, the sheriff, the police chief, the county commissioner, me and Randy kind of have the same job as far as the role of the politician or government official. And then, Sheriff Har and then Chief Knipling. Like those guys, like we talk quite a bit, not like every day or whatever, but like I just went to a presentation across the street at the county commission office. And then they've actually been working on some jail meetings just to talk about it in the future. I don't know when it's going to happen. But that'll be an interesting partnership.
Yeah, and so I think there's a lot of opportunity for partnership on that, and the reason for that is because it would provide our officers the possibility to potentially be located in the same facility, which would then allow prisoner transfer to happen easier. I think
teamwork and cooperation.
Yeah, building cooperation with the county I think is important, and so being able to look at a facility that makes sense for everyone as a part of what we're doing.
Okay, here's a question I just thought about, and I thought about this morning. I forgot to ask Pat, but Mitchell is, or maybe I did ask him this, but Mitchell is like one of, if not the slowest growing community over the last 10 to 20 years of the top 10 in South Dakota. Why is it, and how do we fix it?
I think one of the reasons for that is our strong regional community partners. And so I don't think that if you stand on any edge of our city in the morning, the number of people that are coming into Mitchell for work is...
It's like 5,000 a day or something like that.
And so there's a huge presence that comes into our town. Mm-hmm. And so we are not a giant city by any means, but we have a huge suburb population that comes into Mitchell for work and operations. And those communities have really thrived and grown. And I think that has to do with the strength that Mitchell has. And I think that as Mitchell continues to grow, we need to do so in a way that makes sense for those. And in saying this, I'm not speaking to the voters in my ward by any means, but when the surrounding communities thrive, Mitchell also thrives because of those individuals that come in. One of the reasons why I supported the retail strategies piece is because I thought that could have the possibility to really capitalize or show those numbers of like regional travelers that are not regional travelers. They are a workforce that exists in Mitchell that are specifically coming here every single day to help Mitchell thrive, and then they take their dollars and spend them in Mitchell and then back to whichever community they live in. And then I think the opposite is also true, that there are people that live in Mitchell that go to surrounding communities to live and work as well. And so I think that the possibility for growth, or as we look at growth, that's something we have to consider. What has our regional partners done in the area as well? I do think that Mitchell hasn't boomed in the way that other communities have. As you look at areas like Watertown, when Janklow was governor, he made an aggressive push to attack, I shouldn't say the word attack, but we went after Minneapolis and Minnesota companies. And we used the fact that we do not have any kind of income tax as a way to draw companies into South Dakota. And the place that was 2.5 hours away from Minneapolis was the place that attracted a lot of those businesses. And so what we need to do is look at and how we can attract those companies. And I think the chamber is already doing that work and already working to try and figure out companies that are looking for growth and expansion. And we're positioned right on 90. We have great infrastructure. For a long time, water was a concern, but we have addressed secondary water and created a place where we'll have water infrastructure available. And so I honestly think Mitchell is on the cusp of great things and doing great things. And that's one of the reasons why I want to keep working and I want to keep doing those things to try and get us continuing moving forward to get that growth.
What's going to push us over the cusp?
one more manufacturer.
You think that'll do it?
I think so. That if you combine the soybean plant, if you combined one more manufacturer, you're talking about huge economic dollars coming into Mitchell. And those dollars, as Roger Music would say, well, Dr. Brown very clearly economically pointed out that those dollars would stay in Mitchell. That as they buy and need things, that they're going to do those things in Mitchell. As we look at the economic impact that like the soybean plant had, those economic dollars were construction crews from all over the country that traveled to Mitchell, worked in Mitchell, stayed in Mitchell, and developed that facility. They left, but what we're left with is now truckers are coming to Mitchell. Now we're seeing economic improvements and development from that. And so I think those things all provide us that opportunity. I also think as citizens of Mitchell, we have an obligation to do some of it ourselves, that if we support local and go out to those local shops, those are the kinds of things that companies love to see, and they want to see that happening. And so we live in an age where a majority of transactions happen on credit cards now. And so if they're seeing that your credit card transactions are always going to a different town, they're always going to online manufacturing or online purchasing, there is no need for those facilities to come to Mitchell because, well, I don't need to do that because they go to this other location. And so if we, as a community, I don't want to say boycott Sioux Falls, boycott Amazon, it will drive retailers into this space in a heavier number, I feel like, as well.
I never thought about that. That's a good point. Okay. Do we cover everything?
I think we need to talk about water a little bit.
What water?
All of the
lake water, rainwater, storm water, drain water.
I think
toilet water.
Well, so one of the things that has come up quite a bit in my neck of the woods is
water rates.
Mm-hmm. And I think that as we look at water rates, it's very difficult to see the infrastructure work that gets done on a yearly basis that might cause those rates to be aggressive. I also think that it's difficult to understand, or if you were not actively engaged in every single city council meeting, things that in my mind are a no-brain yes vote, but then directly affect the aggressive nature of what water rates are at, things like the secondary water source. And so where are we at with Randall Rural Water? When is that pipe coming online for the city of Mitchell?
Early next year.
Early next year. And so what that means is we'll have a secondary water source. And so we've worked really hard with Randall to get that for Mitchell in a way that made sense for Mitchell, capacity of water that would make it so we're having water for the city of Mitchell.
$68 million is what the project cost. And we'll be able to double our population, or whatever we use for water, we'll easily be able to double it and still not need more.
Correct. And that's just for the pipe.
Yeah.
That's not the mixing station that went along with that, where the water will come into, all of the infrastructure that's going to that facility, and all of those things, while maintaining the infrastructure, repairing and replacing those things that are critical to everyday needs. And so just like anything else, like a home, like a street, the water and sewer has an expected timeline of life. And there are several key areas that our staff, who I think do a phenomenal job, identified and said these things are needing to be replaced before they become an issue. And so we don't want to wait till a water main breaks to have to go down and fix it. And so we are trying to stay on top of and addressing those issues as aggressively as we can. And so the thing I do enjoy about water is that we are staying on top of infrastructure. If you went down to the list of places that they've identified, that list is extensive. And we don't have the means to do it. And so we try to...
Talking about infrastructure under the ground that needs to be repaired?
Correct.
Oh, okay.
That there is...
Dozens of miles of 100-ish-year-old pipes, yep.
Yeah, and so we're trying to tackle them in a way that makes sense economically and trying to keep our water rates as low as possible while maintaining good potable drinking water and flushable water so it can come to your house and leave your house as well.
Yeah, and we're way, our rates are high, like some of the highest in the state, but in the next 10 years, all the other towns are going to have to do what we're doing, you know what I mean, at a higher price. So eventually over the next decade, we'll level off and be somewhere in the middle.
Correct.
It's just we're the first. The first is, it's just expensive because we have the biggest deal.
Yeah. And I think that as we look at water issues around the country, The progressive steps we're taking today will set Mitchell up not only for the next 30 years, but I honestly think for the next 100 years, because water is a resource that I think is going to become scarce. And so getting ourselves to a place where we're able to get it is going to be something that sets Mitchell up very long term.
Yeah, it's not a real fun project to talk about, but it's important. You know, you just expect to turn your water on and it works.
Yeah.
What else? Anything else? I think we've almost hit our. I don't know if anyone's still watching this or not.
Is this live? I didn't even ask.
It's not live. No.
Oh, okay.
It's gonna be. It's gonna seem live though when people watch it. Okay. I don't have anything else.
Okay. Well, on June 2nd, you can go out and.
Oh wait, term limits. Did we talk about term limits?
We didn't talk about. And this is an area that we disagree on.
Yeah.
And so, do you want to go first? Do you want me to go first? We can go back and forth too. It doesn't matter.
You know, my opinion on term limits is I don't want to make it seem like, you know, I had this conversation. I don't remember who it was with. Now I'm losing track. It's not for what's happening now. It's supposed to be something that happens forever. Not like, let's just do this forever. But I'm talking about like, you know, like when our founding fathers made our laws or our Constitution, they didn't want it to be just for today. They wanted it to be evolving with the future. You know what I mean? And like, I look at it as if 9 years is plenty of time for someone to get something done. And if you just hold on to it for too long, you skip a generation of people that might want to care. And you can, in my opinion, is you cannot say the incumbent doesn't have an advantage. I mean, every video I get gets 5,000 views. You know, I've gotten over 5.7 million views on my Facebook page alone in the last year. That's a huge, you know, unless everyone hates me, which is, who knows? Well, I guess we'd know it at election time. But people remember what they know. It's really hard for people to vote for someone they don't know at all. Like people have watched hundreds of hours of me, so they feel like they know me one way or another. And I think that advantage carries out for sure. And I mean, I could probably run forever. Of course, I'd lose. Eventually, I'd lose, maybe. I don't know. But to me, that advantage is not fair. And I know you have a different feeling, but go ahead.
Well, and so I guess I have a question for you, because you say that people know you.
Yeah.
And in the community Mitchell size, I think that's an important thing for a candidate.
Right.
And so why are we trying to remove a barrier from that requirement?
Remove a barrier.
And so people need to know the candidates they're voting for. Mm-hmm. And so why are we removing a barrier from them having to know someone or trying to take a hurdle down? Because I believe that adamantly you should be involved in the community. Mm-hmm. And if you're not involved in the community, the barrier of, well, I'm trying to run for city council and people don't know me, there are things you can do. There are volunteer boards that you can get on to let people know who you are.
Right, but you're also let's just say someone's been on for 9 years. Like, unless I started working as hard as you did for 9 years, I mean, you're getting 9 years of newspaper, you're getting 9 years of radio, you're getting 9 years of city council meetings. All that is addition to. It's really hard for a new person to overcome that. Does that make sense?
Like, it does. You realize that I did lose to city council races before I got on city council.
Exactly, yeah.
And so I wasn't disenfranchised by that process. In fact, many of my friends encouraged me because of the number of votes I did get in both of those elections, that there are people that enjoy my message and there are people that don't enjoy my message.
Oh, yeah.
And so there are people that probably will vote for me today that would not have voted for me previously. And a lot of that is record-based. But I think that's one of the things that council candidates need to do is get out and show what their positions on things are, and that what they want for the city of Mitchell is what the citizens want. I think that if somebody says that they're disenfranchised by the number of years that somebody has served, I get that. And honestly, my position as a city councilman, if reelected or tomorrow, is going to be the same on June 3rd as it is on June 4th. Because the city will have voted, and my job will be to adjudicate that decision. Make sure that if term limits go in, if that's what the people want, then we need to make sure that it stays in and it goes into effect. And if people vote it down, that will also be my position at that point. That nothing I do as a city council member should be, well, this is just how I view, screw the voters. It should be, what did the people decide? And if they decided that, that's what we should all agree the city of Mitchell wanted. And so that's what my position will be on the 3rd of June. Whatever the people decided, it will be what I vote for.
So what do you think the downsides of term limits are? That's the one thing I always try to think of.
Yeah, so I think one of the things that doesn't get brought up probably enough is if we have term limits, and 9 years is a time period, but depending on the project, I mean, how many years have we talked about an event center in Mitchell?
Since 2005 was the oldest I could get. So I could find something.
Okay, so we're at 21 years, and to my knowledge, we don't have an event center outside of the Corn Palace, correct?
Yep.
And so in that time, as we look at that, if that's something you're passionate about, it's been 21 years and we haven't successfully gotten it done, but that doesn't mean you don't lose passion for that project. It just means that you haven't successfully accomplished it. And I think that there are things that a person could be passionate about that, you asked what the tipping point was, and we don't know what the tipping point for that project will be for its success. But if you're continuing to be passionate about it, for me, as I look at what makes me run for city council, it's just to adjudicate and be responsible for the city. And so that passion, as long as it's there, I would consider running for city council. And I think city staff, as we look at like the long-term future of Mitchell, if every 3, 6, 9 years you're having different people in the seats and you're having new ideas, are we taking one idea that, for these group of individuals, it's this project. And then in 3 years, we haven't solved the first project yet, but then in 3 years, we're going to start doing work for another project. Do you think that there's potential for burnout for city staff that are unable to see any project that they're working on get to fruition for those kinds of things?
I think that's potential right now with the way it is currently. So
Yeah.
I guess to me, I would say that would be more of an argument for term limits because, dude, if you give me 20 years to work on a project, or you give me 5 years to work on a project, it's Parkinson's law. It's called Parkinson's law. I recently figured it out or heard about it. Is the work expands for the amount of time that you give it. If I said you need to have all your work done before 5, you can go home. But if you also get your work all done by 2, you can go home early. Most people are like, I'm gonna work really hard and get it done and go home early. And I feel like if you put a time limit, you said it earlier this time, putting a timeline and a deadline on something will probably make it more come to fruition faster. Because if you don't have a timeline, like, hey, guess what? I'm just going to run forever and let's just hope I get something done. Like you said, 20 years on it.
I'm not running forever. That's a for sure thing.
You heard it here, folks.
Yeah.
But
I think
does that make sense? Like, man,
no, I get you.
If you have a deadline, like I always said, I'm never going to run for a second term because I want to get as much stuff as I can possibly get done in 3 years and then leave. And like with that attitude in mind, I went extremely hard trying to get as much stuff as I could get done possible.
Well, and so one of the things that I was thankful for is that I stayed up on the lake issue because my first city council meeting, we were voting on Lake Mitchell.
Yep.
And the other people sitting at that table besides Mike Bathke and me had years of meetings with engineers, meetings with studies, reviewing those studies, providing information, and they had all of this knowledge. And so if your candidate doesn't have that knowledge because they didn't pay attention for the years or they didn't do that work, it becomes a problem.
Right.
Because now you're making uninformed decisions when everyone in the room assumes you know all this information. But in the forums, it was very clear that people on day one would not know or have that information available to them. I'm not going to call those individuals out right now, but if you watch the forum, you can ask our city staff and administration questions at any time.
For sure.
And they're very good about getting answers. And so if you're not ready day one, there is that potential or risk that you're going to have problems with the vote that you'll have.
See, and that to me, again, that seems to be a point that says yes to term limits, because if you knew for sure you could not win an election, like you're going to work a little bit extra harder those 6 months coming up to it and say, no, we got to push this through. We got to push this. We're not going to wait. Let's just wait 2 more weeks. So let's just wait till the next city council meeting. It's like, no, we're doing it now because there's a chance I'm not going to be here. I'm passionate about it. I want to get it done. Not, I'll just campaign a little harder to get an extra 3 years.
Correct. But in your first 2 years, we had the lake plan approved. We had that process, and there was a hurdle.
Right.
And so we have worked through some of those challenges. And so sometimes, even if you have a plan, if you have a process in place, those hurdles can exist. And so I don't discredit you or anyone else who feels...
That'd be another thing. Like there's people that have been on the council for 20 years and had no idea that we had this thing. And it was, hey, it's a DNR approved plan. Heard it multiple times. It wasn't. I mean, that's just the facts. It was not a DANR approved plan. The DANR had never approved this plan. At least like the dam start part of it. We had no it's good. The SRF loan was
I think it's disingenuous to say the DNR didn't approve any part of the plan.
not the whole. The plan was not approved.
I think that the drawdown, as we look at the drawdown, the maximum flood capacity study that was required, there was not a study done about what would happen if the whole dam went away. And so that's what was requested. And I don't know.
Originally in 2022
by
DNR.
And so
it was just missed.
And
that's
so,
what I mean. That's why where it's like, oh, the institutional knowledge.
Yeah. And
we missed it. You know what I mean? And now I have to be the one that kind of, I mean, I know people are like, oh, he's making it slow. It's like, dude, that's not my fault.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Well, but on the flip side, I think that things get missed. And so it is good to catch those things. And if you're the one that caught it, I appreciate that.
It wasn't me.
Okay. And so
it was not me that caught it. I didn't know.
I wasn't going to say that you weren't the one that caught it. And so
we got a letter and I was like,
yeah. And so
I remember real quick. I'll tell you a funny story. I remember we got the letter and we were all sitting, me and the city staff were sitting in there and we're just like, this is a day where I'll never forget because we were not expecting this. Like,
yeah. And so I don't know where or when that was missed, but I don't know that you can squarely put the blame on anyone that was in the seats that I now hold or my
100%. I agree. Yeah.
And so I don't know that if you have new blood, old blood in there, I don't know that is a solution for catching that or saying that. I think that at the end of the day, if you have new ideas and if you have new concepts that you want to see involved, you could certainly bring them up to your city council member. I talk to my residents all the time about different ideas. And if I agree with them, I will be very straightforward with them about that. And if I don't, I do the same. I had one individual reach out to me about an issue with a rental of city facilities for an outside entity. And their contention was that they were calling it the Palace City something or another, and it wasn't a Mitchell organization doing it. And so as they adjudicated that with me or talked to me about it, they wanted me to stop the event from happening. And I said, the contract had already been signed. The promotions for that event had already gone up. And so were you planning to host an event that weekend? No. Were you planning to host a different event within like a month or two of that? No. Okay. In the future, do you plan on hosting those events? Yes. When I leave this phone call, I will call city staff and make sure that your organization, which is from Mitchell, has priority to make sure future events that you request have priority and we get you on the calendar. If the outside entity wants to continue to rent and do events in Mitchell, I will welcome that every single time. But I do think your group should have priority, but it doesn't sound like you can have an event coming up in a month. And so let's do that. And I don't think that was the resolution they wanted, but it was certainly trying to represent them and who they are. And so as we talk about new ideas, which is I think one of the things that is that somebody who's in favor of term limits would say is that new ideas should come to council and you should bring them to council. And I'm not saying come to city hall or the city council meetings. I'm saying you could email me or text me anytime you want to talk about how you want or what you want as a citizen. And I'm always happy to answer emails.
Because we're representatives.
Yeah, exactly. And so honestly, I think that barrier for some people is speaking in front of people, and the idea of having to come down for
the podium's
is an intimidating place for some people. Yep. And so I think that barrier alone stops good ideas from happening. And so I want you to know that you can discreetly tell me anything as far as an idea goes, and I'll listen to it. And my personal philosophy on that is if you tell me an idea, unless you explicitly say, I want you to tell people this is my idea, I keep that very private and personal. Because what you tell me as your council member, I don't know that privilege should exist with council members and their residents, but I think that if it's an idea that's good for Mitchell, everyone should get on board with it.
It's really hard to get. I've been trying to think of a plan that everyone could get on board with.
Oh, absolutely. There's going to be...
I don't know what it would be. Everyone.
There are going to be pieces of a plan that potentially disenfranchises somebody. And so one of the things that recently came up was a sign that, that has been in the headlines. And so working through that with the contractor and the neighbors, I think one of the healthy things that has come out of that is good conversation with the neighbors about things that they would be acceptable and not acceptable. I think that there are a lot of potential with those projects. In the past, what I've seen is that as those conversations happened, what ends up happening is developers or the person developing the project are able to work with the neighbors to come up with compromises. And some of those compromises are literally shifting a project 3 feet. And then the neighbors, then it's good to go. And so those kinds of things are happy, but the developer saying, this is exactly what I want to do. And then they have to send those letters out, and then we get feedback from the neighbors. And then we look at that feedback and say, does this make sense for that area? Does the neighbors complain? And I don't like the idea of neighbors being able to say what goes on your property, but if it affects the price value of my property and or the value of my property, I certainly understand people having concern with those things. And so just being aware of those things and making sure that we're being good neighbors to each other is certainly important.
A sign issue. It's going to be a different one. Hopefully we don't have to table it again.
Well, and so I'm the one that motioned to table it, but that was at the developer's request.
Right.
And so if the developer, any variance that we do, if the person asking for the variance asks for it to be tabled,
I get it.
That's what we do. I was ready to vote, so we'll see what happens.
There's a lot of tabling.
Yeah.
What else? I think we're probably way over time here. I don't know if anyone's watching this yet, but about 2 to 4% of people make it all the way to the end of these videos, which is pretty good for an hour long or a half hour long.
Has it been an hour? That's crazy.
Yeah, it has. Yeah.
See, time flies.
Should we go 2 more hours?
Sure.
Yeah, no, I don't want to do that. I gotta go swimming.
Yeah, I think that one thing I would say is that, the people that are probably staying to the end are people that are engaged in our city and really care. And what I would ask that you do is reach out to a city staff member if you know them and thank them for the hard work they do. Our city staff take a lot of grief from a lot of people, and they adjudicate the decisions that the mayor or city council decide and make. And so those things are not necessarily their fault. And so how they do those things, every single staff member, every single city employee that I talk to tries to do the best they can in their position for the city of Mitchell, I feel like. And we are very lucky for the team that we have and all of the hard work that they do.
It's funny you say that because when I first started, I went to some of the staff. I'm like, why would you not just do this? And they're like, because I wasn't told to do that. I'm like, well, why wouldn't you just do it? They're like, we can't just be like runaway like government staff that does whatever we want. We have to listen to elected officials. And I was like, oh yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Okay, because just because I think you should do it doesn't mean like you have to listen to the elected officials. Like that's the way it works. And then I was like, okay, cool. Like these guys staff takes direction from the elected officials. I don't know why it took me so long to learn that, but yeah, you don't want just runaway government or staff doing whatever they feel like doing, no matter what the elected officials say.
And if you ever...
They do a good job. I want to add that too. Yeah, the city staff is amazing.
And every single one of them, I think, has a project or a plan that they would love to see for the growth and development of their department. Mm-hmm. And that's one of my favorite things is when they're able to show or talk about something that they're passionate about. And it really connects you not only with them as an individual, but then also how much they care about their departments and what they think and need is what a lot of the times drives our city budgets. And so the passion that they have, I certainly appreciate, and able to connect with them about those projects and try and figure out ways to fund those things are certainly important.
Should we talk about a roundabout real quick?
Sure.
I was just kidding.
I can talk about a roundabout.
I don't know if anyone's watching this, but talk about it. Let's do it. And then we'll wrap up because it's been over an hour.
One of the things I'll think about with a roundabout is the future of that area, because when we put in infrastructure, we're talking about the next 30 to 50 years, depending on the type of road you put in and the infrastructure you put underneath it. I certainly will say that as a part of that project, one of the things that I was very passionate about is getting sidewalk onto that corner. I think that area of town has long overdue for the sidewalk. And in this case, the bike path addition to that sidewalk as a part of what we're doing. I think that the neighbors came in and brought up some really good points. I think one of the things that got missed is that currently that intersection is uncontrolled. And so they talked about the safety of a roundabout, but certainly a roundabout.
It's not uncontrolled. It's got control at two sides.
Two sides, but it's not a always controlled intersection.
Yeah.
And so the roundabout has some safety concerns as a part of that. But I would say that the uncontrolled two sides has safety concerns as well. And so I think the roundabout will address some of those things. It will naturally slow down traffic as a part of what we're doing. I think that there are certainly people that are frustrated that we're doing a roundabout, that they don't feel like Mitchell's at a place where we need roundabouts. However, when I go to places that have roundabouts, I appreciate the flow and the pattern of traffic that happens there, and that it certainly makes intersections more navigated in ease, in my opinion. That being said, if you don't like roundabouts, I apologize. I mean, that's, and I think that was one of the things that I realized in that project, right? You talk about there are people that are not going to be happy, and no matter what information you provide about roundabouts, there are going to be people that don't like them or don't want them.
Right.
And I apologize that we're putting one into you folks that don't.
I would like to see one, and this is just a personal opinion, it would be at Spruce and Raleigh, over by like Menards, that corner where there's a four-way stop now. I think that'd be an excellent spot. There's nothing that's going to interfere right now. Right now it's four-way stop. We don't have any electrical there for lights and stuff. I think that'd be a cool spot. Not advocating for it. I just think that'd be...
I think there are potential for other places in town that potentially could have a roundabout. Yep. I think as we get a roundabout in town, people are going to enjoy them, and they're going to start calling for them to happen more.
It'd be a learning curve, yeah.
Yeah, and so...
Okay, anything else before we wrap up?
No, thanks for your time. I appreciate anyone who did watch till the end. I certainly think an informed electorate is a good electorate. I do wish that we could do these with, and this isn't a dig on you because I appreciate you doing them, but I think that it should have been someone else.
A media company? For sure, 100%.
Anyone else. I don't know. The newspaper, again, did an article about me and my opponent, and, compared and contrast, I think that it has a lot of potential. I do fear that having somebody that's not personally set to gain from this, but like has personal motivations, you run the risk of like, there are council members now that I don't feel like you would sit down and talk with.
I would talk to 100% of them. I have an open invite. It may not be
no, not the candidates running today, but I'm saying
all of them. I don't care. Everyone current and possible. I would sit down with all of them.
You'd sit down with Kevin McCardle?
For sure. No problem.
Can I ask why you don't come to our meetings then?
Which ones?
The president and vice president meetings?
Because I got very frustrated by something he did that I thought was completely unethical, and I did not want to be involved with unethical, immoral behavior. Would I do it in front of everyone? Absolutely, because I think things need to be public.
Okay.
But I do not want to do any of those private meetings anymore, because the last time I want to get called out for something that I think is immoral.
Okay.
That's my thoughts.
Well, you're always welcome back to them.
No, totally understand.
The other day I saw that the mayor was on the invite list, and when I got to the meeting, I was like, is the mayor coming? And I was informed you were not. And I was like, okay. And so...
I believe all things need to happen above the table. That's why I want everyone to see these videos.
Yeah, and so to be clear, these meetings are... I sit down as vice president with city administration to go over the agenda for the meeting that's going to happen on that following Monday.
Yep.
And it's about finding out information that's going to be on the agenda and provide feedback to that meeting's agenda that might come up from a councilman's perspective. And so in the past, Jordan was at those meetings and provided feedback directly to him about different things that I thought would come up. And some of them did, some of them didn't, and just tried to provide that feedback ahead of time. And the reason for that is because if we can provide questions or information to city staff ahead of time, they can go to those meetings a little bit more prepared and find out answers to questions. I think that's the benefit of them. Or if there's like a wording or a way we present something and we can try and catch that ahead of time, we don't always do it, but I think that's the benefit of those meetings as a part of what we're doing. And so that, for me, I've really enjoyed those meetings because I love knowing information. And so that meeting has provided a lot of good information for me.
And a lot of it for me is like, I already know everything that's going to be on the agenda. A lot of times I put it together and I put all the stuff in. My phone is always available for anyone, including you and Kevin and everyone on the city, to just call me whenever. And I'm busy outside of stuff. And yeah, I used to go to them all the time. But like I said, some of that stuff, just sitting down in private, frustrates me because I do not appreciate some comments, especially privately.
Okay. Can we do one of my favorite things now that, like, let's end on a positive note.
Okay.
Let's reward somebody who's watched this video for over an hour.
Okay, so here's what I was thinking. I don't know what your thought, but I was just going to say a random number, and whoever comments it first gets some sort of imaginary prize.
I'm going to pay for 2 tickets to the Corn Palace for anyone who...
Wait, they could just skip to the end, though. But they won't know about this unless they watch the whole thing.
Yeah, or at least skip to the part we're talking about right now. So I will give Jordan, I'll pay for, out of my own pocket, 2 tickets to either Cole Swindell or to Andy Grammer, who's coming to the Corn Palace for the Corn Palace Festival.
And I want to bring up something that we talked about at the forum. You talked about at the forum how we don't agree on a certain artist. It was a musical artist.
Correct.
Which I don't know if everyone knew that.
Oh, yeah.
Because you said artist. I was like, what are you talking about? Like, I was thinking of a painting, a musician.
Yes.
And that's been a funny running joke. Because I just absolutely do not like the sound of one person's voice. And Tim would love to bring them here. They fit within our budget, very popular. Most people probably love them. Just a personal thing I don't like. And I said, I would for sure give up my personal preference for the good of the community.
Yeah, and so this process, when we think about artists for the Corn Palace, we get a list of, 1,000 names. I don't actually know how many names are on there. I don't count them all. But you just go through them and you say, this artist makes sense at this budget. And then there's artists that are probably too low or too small for the Corn Palace that aren't name recognized enough at this point in their career, or are, what's the polite way of saying, they had maybe one hit in the 80s, and I don't know that people would want to go see them, a whole concert of theirs.
Yep.
And then all the way up to artists that are so popular right now that the seating capacity of the Corn Palace probably doesn't make financial sense to bring them. The one that I like to get thrown in my face a lot is Taylor Swift, for example. Financially, probably can't bring her into the Corn Palace. But I look forward to the day where I'm old enough and she's cheap enough that we can have that happen. But that's just an example, and I don't know that there's ever going to be a day because her fans are awesome. But I think that we go through those lists, and there's been an artist on there, and the mayor has. We have tried to make an offer to that artist, and it just hasn't worked out because, we're limited to certain days, certain calendar days, and one of the things that I do think we have the possibility of is other artists, other times to do that. I certainly want to bring back, I would love to see 3 or 4 concert days. And so if we can prove that we can do 2 successful concert days in a row, I think there's a possibility for a third.
That is one thing we are completely aligned on is we just need to rebuild that reputation of awesome concerts, have 2 really crushers that just crush and either sell out. I think we're going to sell out one of them this year.
Yeah.
I bought 3 sold out signs that I haven't got to use yet from Scotty McCreary. So this will be year 3. Hopefully we get to hang them this year.
Yep.
But I think getting that reputation back is going to be good. And I think the 2 concerts we chose this year were awesome.
Yeah.
Like we pushed our budget, we pushed our everything to try to make it work. Tickets are a little bit more expensive, but it's going to be worth it in the long run. Oh yeah, how did they claim their tickets? Can we just pick a random number, and if whoever comments that number first wins the tickets?
Sure.
What's your number?
I'll say 6.
Oh, I was going to say 37. Whatever.
Okay.
Well, we'll do 6 since you're buying them. First person to comment the word 6, they're the number 6, gets 2 free tickets to whatever show they want.
Yeah.
Is that fair?
Yeah, we'll coordinate with you. I'll have to go down to the Corn Palace and buy them and then get them to you.
It's just going to have a comment that says 6.
Yeah, who knows? Yeah. So, but if you're engaged enough in our city, that's the least I can.
This is the longest interview I did so far. So again, if anyone's still watching, I encourage everyone I'll talk to anyone, any candidate, whatever.
Yeah, I think that what
were the rules I told you before?
You told me rules?
Yeah, nothing's off the table and we're only going to do 1 take.
Oh, I guess, he did maybe say that. I didn't count that as a rule.
Okay.
Just seemed like we were having he was like, I can ask you anything once the camera's on. And I was like, that's how cameras typically work, Jordan. I don't know. And so those are the kinds of things that, we have disagreements at city council, but I think it's important to understand that, we're still friendly. We still work together on issues. Mm-hmm. And so those are the kinds of things that I love to engage with everyone about. Even if I disagree with you on something, that doesn't mean I still can't have a polite conversation.
I think we did that. Yeah.
Try and make good efforts to make Mitchell better for tomorrow.
Yeah.
And so
that's a happy ending note, huh?
Yeah.